Happy New Year, Dr. Bewley.
Happy New Year, 2026.
Feels like a date of the future that I don't really feel super connected to. Um,
I don't know if you saw this, but like more recently, there's like this 2016 viral thing. Like, what were you doing in 2016?
I have.
And it's like, gosh, 10 years ago. How was that 10 years ago?
Oh my gosh, yes. In 2016, Dr. Bewley, I was going into full-time private practice. Oh my gosh,
Back
that's
to the future.
wild. Yeah. I was doing something I think we'll get into it, what I was doing in a bit, but I was doing some administration work. And I typed the date 2030 for the first time ever
Mm,
because it's only 4 years away. And that was a very futuristic Jetsons experience of I just I again I 2026 is a little unfathomable to me right now, even though I'm writing it and typing it. It just doesn't feel natural.
yeah. Well, there will be flying, you know, cars in the sky by then, but they're probably going to be working for Amazon, delivering your next package.
Oh my gosh. Have you seen those robots that do that? Like deliver like food or packages? Have you seen those?
They're kind of like little dogs, right? Like
Yeah, it's like a little pod on wheels. Yes.
they haven't
I
made
s-
it to Denton, Texas yet, but
no, no. So I saw them in Austin. In Austin, Texas, in downtown, there was definitely a bot delivery service of some sort, and it was truly a wild visual.
yeah, nice.
And by wild, I mean obviously very tame and highly controlled, I'm sure, but a wild emotional experience.
Well, here we are in a new year, and on this episode of the Consulting Psychologists Beyond the Session, we're going to be talking about kind of how do you go into a new year of private practice, points for discussion, things that might be, need to be on your radar for your practice. And these are just our perspective, but things that we've noticed we do kind of going into new year. So,
Absolutely.
start of a new year, kind of what starts to play out for you, maybe practice wise.
Sure. The first thing that comes to my mind is reviewing all of my paperwork and making sure that everything is current. And so, what might go into that for me is that, I have it written into my practice policies that every certain year I might raise my rates. And so, depending on what year it is, I might need to go through and update, rates, any policy changes that have, been aggregated through the year. You know what, we should really update that. And we try not to do updates during the year, just so that we're sure that most people have the same set of policies so that we can abide by them. And so usually that's why the new year just seems like a good clean time to update any kind of policy. So, whether that's updating a policy for a cancellation policy, lengthening the time or lowering the time or something like that, rate changes, anything that may be different in the way that you operate regarding billing, those kinds of things. So that comes to my mind. I always like to give my informed consent documents a read and make sure that they feel congruent with the way that the office is operating and the way that we're practicing. And, when you read something enough times, sometimes that you find new ways to maybe shorten it or make it more digestible. So small little tweaks like that usually come down the pike around this time for me.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
about
that's
you?
cool. Similarly, like I like to look at my policies and procedures and kind of review everything and, see does everything still fit for me, maybe update any language or anything necessary. I have a similar process as you where it's in my policies of what fee increases look like from a every 2 year basis. And, just on that note, I do think, you know, APA, most ethic codes don't name a specific number of days to let clients know, but they do emphasize transparency and avoidance of harm and a reasonable opportunity to
Hmm.
plan. And I think sometimes that can be seen as at least giving, one full billing cycle, so 30 days or so. But I know I like to like let clients know heading into a new year where there's going to be a fee change, maybe late October, so about 60 days that's
Yeah.
coming up. But then once I update that actual policy, I'll have them re-sign that as the new year starts.
You make such a good point, right? Like the new year may come with these tasks of updating things, but if we zoom out a little bit, best practice isn't just January 1, hey, guess what? New updates. It's how have we for current, it may be new updates for somebody new to our system, and then it's all well and good. But for current folks, how are we informing them? So I really appreciate that zoom out. And that kind of like 30, 60, 90-day notice is kind of a sweet spot for whatever is in accordance with somebody's most comfort, um comfort level around that. And so when you do, just for the sake of talking through this part, when you do notify people of upcoming changes, how, like, what is the process you go through to provide that update?
Yeah, it's great. I have a kind of a document that I created or use where,
Hmm.
I reference like this is in the policies that you've already signed to, and consented to, but here we are, time for this update. Here's, as a reminder what this means. So why my fees go up every 2 years, and just, recognize or document or comment that there might be emotions or feelings related to that, especially for private pay clients
Hmm.
where really the fee increase is impacting them.
Hmm.
Because I think the thing is for both managed care providers that we are, the fee increase doesn't necessarily mean that we're getting paid more from insurance for sure. So I think just I like the process of creating a conversation for clients if they want that, if they
Hmm.
would like to talk about that, um, and acknowledge like, yep, everything's going up, gas, eggs, milk, just in therapy as well. But it's a way that we can keep our practices sustainable.
Hmm.
And, I feel like it's a fair increase in terms of, I don't feel like I'm price gouging.
That it's commensurate with everything else going up, right? And it's maybe you're not just adding an increase because everyone else is, it's in accordance with a practice policy that you have listed about when that increase comes. And I hear that loud and clear, that you may talk about it like this was planned and it's timely from a sustainable practice standpoint for you as a person in the world.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, I mean, I feel like in November this fall, we had a conversation, me and you, around the feelings that I was feeling around, do I do this increase,
Right.
in terms of just feeling kind of icky about it. But
Hmm.
talking that out through consultation, I think helped me realize like, no, there's a reason I have this set policy and set plan. And, working through my own discomfort,
Hmm.
asking for more money from clients
Hmm.
was a big part of that consultation.
Hmm. I don't think that we can talk enough just about how much we're impacted by our clients' stories and the knowledge that we have about their circumstances, and that's the line, the tightrope we walk around knowing their stories, being in their stories with them, helping them through those stories while also honoring our story, right? As a private, as a business owner, as someone who needs to follow through with what we've set for ourselves respectively, so that we can continue to be with them in their stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Y- so you say you have do you send it via email and then maybe have a conversation in session with them? Is that what I heard you say?
I send the fee notice reminder late October, and um, if clients don't sign it, I send it through the client portal.
Hmm.
So if they're not signed it, I'll, haven't signed it, I'll check in with them in session that, I sent
Hmm.
you a document regarding the fee increase. It's nothing new, it's in the policy, but it's just a reminder we're hitting that year. Um, and then so in the winter break, what I like to do, not that you have to do it this way, but I like to kind of start the year where all my clients
Hmm.
are going to sign at the same time. And
Hmm.
so for new people that I've seen in November, December, I'll acknowledge like, hey, I know you just signed these documents, but receive these annually from all my clients. So please
Gotcha.
re-review them and re-sign. But I'll use the portal that way and kind of monitor when clients aren't completing those, if there's anything in there that they're uncomfortable with, or did they just miss
Yeah.
the email?
Yeah. Gotcha. One of the things that I tried this year with regard to notifying folks about upcoming changes, excuse me, was I used an announcement feature in my EHR, and I feel very protective about not overusing that feature. So if any of my clients are listening, know that I am very intentional about not overwhelming folks with announcements like that from a practice-wide standpoint. But it was the easiest and most administratively economical way for me to ensure that every client was given the opportunity, whether they read it or not is on them, to be made aware of upcoming changes. And when we did update our missed appointment, late cancellation policy, and then we also had a fee update. And so it listed it there. And then for kind of long-term clients, they get some new paperwork at the beginning of every year, very similar to you. And then it's updated for new clients, and it's a moot point there. And so, I for folks who've come in during that year and they may not be up for renewal, I do think it kind of depends if they may not resign at the beginning of every year, and I think they get new paperwork kind of the next calendar year. So that's the way that we do it, just from an administrative management process. I will say that the way that you're describing it sounds really reasonable, especially as a solo practitioner who doesn't have anybody managing that. It's like, let me just do all of this in one fell swoop, and that way I know that everybody is working from the same manual here, for same book of policies. Whereas, I think that there's a different advantage for me. There's more clients for more providers from the group practice standpoint, but our administrative support allows for us to do this on a more rolling basis. So for whatever that's worth, I think it's six one way, half a dozen the other. There's no right, but these are the ways that we found that feel right and good in accordance with our ethical standards. So that makes good sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think I operated from a 60-day standpoint. I sent my announcement out about upcoming practice policy changes 60 days. I think it was the first week of November, to be kind of precise, but 60 days approximately before the change took effect, which I think is well in compliance to, you know, um, uh, reasonable effort to notify and update.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, the zoom out is this is happening in the fall for us on an administrative level. And then the zoom in to the new year is maybe implementing it, making all the updates if they haven't been made already, sending them out where relevant, just making sure that everybody's up to date from a client's informed consent standpoint. So that makes good sense. Um, you said something I did want to touch base about. I think it's really important that just because we raise our fees as insurance-based providers, at least for me, probably 80 to 90%, doesn't mean that we're getting more money. And I wanted to talk a little bit about maybe the reason why we should still raise our rates, even if it doesn't affect our insurance reimbursements. Would that be okay to talk about?
Yeah.
So, I think that talking about the human aspect of money is important. If there are clients listening to this, and anybody else who's looking into private practice or refining their own private practice through our consultation, is we do have a pretty fixed income in ways that are, ethical. We can only see so many appointments in a week ethically, right? And somebody might be able to see more than someone else based on their energy levels or capacities, but it's probably never a really great idea to have 40 direct service hours a week,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's 40 client appointments. And then when you think about documentation and administrative work, I mean, that's upwards of 50 hours a week by default. That to me is not like a sustainable way to engage practice, although some people may, and it may be sustainable for them. And so we are on fixed incomes, and that income is dictated by our insurance companies, and that is dictated, and accepting that rate um, is informed by our commitment to accessible care. And so those fee increases are about ensuring that we are billing a rate commensurate with industry standards to the insurance company or a third party. And so billing what we get means that the receiver of that fee would say, oh, they're only billing this amount. That means that they only are going to get 75% of it or 65% of it. Versus, oh, the industry standard for a psychologist might be a fee in this range. Okay, they'll get, 65 or 75% of that. And so that is a way to continue to communicate to managed care providers or third party payers what the going rate is for being able for that hour of service at that level of training. So I just think that that's so important, just a little tidbit of education, that sometimes people bill what the contracted rate is, and that will inherently undermine their potential for reimbursement. But bill your industry standard. Whatever your profession is, bill your industry standard. And so that's why that fee is important for us from a managed care advocacy. That's a form of advocacy if we think about it that way. So anyway, just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Yeah. Well, and on this note, there is some research out there that shows that in 2023, for instance, 2/3 of therapists planned to raise fees,
Mhm.
but only a third did.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
And so the main reasons that therapists delay or avoid raising fees are fear of losing clients,
Mhm.
desire to keep therapy affordable,
Mhm.
and economic uncertainty.
Sure.
Which I think is sort of kind of what was going into our consultation in the fall.
100%.
But I think it's good to remember, like, we don't get paid leave, and like for instance, this week I was summoned to do jury duty, and was a good citizen and went down and realized that not everybody shows up when they get that. So that was interesting, but
Isn't that a crime?
it may be punishable is what the thing said. But the way I operate, I'm like, I don't want to take that chance.
Absolutely. No, I thought it was I thought it was a crime, not maybe
Yeah.
punishable. So thank you for being a good citizen of your county and the state and doing your due diligence. But I know that for business owners like us, where we only eat what we kill, which is a phrase that kind of goes into private practice a lot, that it can be a hit.
Yeah. So I think we're on the same page, though, that, by no means is this a light, a thing that we don't take seriously. And, I think especially too at the beginning of the new year, when you have insurance clients, oftentimes, I think, or maybe always, deductibles typically start over January 1st.
I wouldn't say always, because sometimes plan years operate on a plan year versus the calendar year. But
Okay.
however, I think I think majority of plans, it's on a calendar year, to your point.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a lot of clients can feel a little bit more financially vulnerable heading into the new year after the holidays and
Yes.
spending more. So I just know as part of like practice, kind of going into the new year, for me also there's this mental preparation that sometimes January can actually be a little bit slower because deductibles are in place for a lot of people and the frequency is impacted. But then there's this, for me, I also get an influx of new clients maybe using the beginning of the new year to really initiate change for themselves. So it also feels like this busy time, but in some ways not as busy, or the week looks different.
That's such a good point, that maybe it's more administratively busy, as kind of, it's like there really is a transition effect coming out of the holidays, the new year, the financial stuff that you just mentioned. And so, speaking of practice readiness at the turn of every year, that is something that we do, is for every client, we re-verify insurance benefits if it's and that way, for anybody that's a calendar year, they are prepared in advance that they have a deductible due, and we tell them what that session amount is based on their insurance. And so there is a lot of it's administratively heavy in that way, for the practice management side.
Yeah. And I'm imagining if there's therapists out there listening right now thinking like, oh crap, I haven't had clients re-sign documents in 2 years.
Mhm.
I think that we're talking about best practices here and what fits for us as
Mhm.
private practice clinicians.
What
And
we see as best practices
yeah,
in the in instances where there isn't a universally stated best practice, to I think is what you're saying, yeah.
yeah, thinking about like other areas where maybe you have a membership to some place and it's really difficult, or years later a policy gets implemented and you're like, well, hold on, when did I sign that last? And
Hmm.
for me, I think it's important that my clients are regularly, yearly informed of my policies, and we have check-ins around how are we doing, how is this policy
Hmm.
fitting, not fitting. I know I feel most comfortable with that, knowing that we've had this conversation every year.
Hmm. No surprises for sure. And thinking about it even from a therapeutic perspective, that's our responsibility as the person with inherent power in the space. Is, there have been some updates. I want to make sure that you're aware of those. I want to hold you responsible to reading announcements or, reading through updates related to signing new documents, but I also want to check in with you about them. Do you understand them? Right? Um, do you have comments? Do you have concerns? How does this affect our work in the year ahead? Um,
Yeah.
so I definitely appreciate the value that we share around informed consent and using our power in a really important way in that way.
Would you maybe talk a little bit about your decision to change your attendance policy? Because I know that is a
Hmm.
common thing that people look at in terms of, similar to fees being a regular thing, kind of
Hmm.
where, how attendance late cancellation
Hmm.
policies are playing out in a practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So to not to bury the lead, I'll say that we discussed as a treatment team and as an admin team to extend, I don't know what the right language is here, extend to go from a 24-hour to a 48-hour cancellation policy. So meaning that you need to let us know that you need to cancel sooner. And here's the why of that. Um, Being business owners and kind of only getting paid when we provide service and reserving services in our schedule for somebody who cancels because they overlooked their own calendar management can really put a therapist in a bind, whether it's me or somebody, on my team. And in an effort to say, hey, this affects other people, that was kind of part of the mindset going into extending that policy to see if it changes anybody's behavior. And so, you know, I'm I'm going to ramble a little bit here, but um it really is about being able to honor when somebody cancels literally 24 hours before an appointment. The ability to fill that time is very slim. Does it happen sometimes? Sure, but it does not happen majority of the time or consistently. And so a 48-hour cancellation policy may give us more time to get that space filled so that we can have some consistency in income or know what to expect in terms of pay in the next pay period. And that is just one of the ways that we have to manage our income, our cash flow, as a business, as individual clinicians. And so that really went into that conversation. We talked about it over multiple internal conversations, at consultation meetings in the practice. And I think it was worth a try, and we'll see how it goes. I know that there was a notice about it, and even at the 16th day of the year so far, there have been some people who are like, "Oh, I thought it wasn't that, and I thought it was 24." And so, what I'm reflecting on is, do I send out another announcement? Hey, just a reminder, these changes took effect, January 1st, which is probably what is best to do. Um, and I get it. Nobody is perfect at managing schedules. It just impacts therapists differently when scheduling errors on your end occur. And, and that's outside of urgent issues for which we have some understanding and flexibility for. But really wanting to make sure that folks understand that it impacts people on the other end of that. And that therapy is most effective when we've been intentional about it. And if it's not something on your schedule every time and you're relying on appointment reminders, are you really thinking, what are you doing your homework from the previous session? And are you really prioritizing implementing your therapy if you're not remembering it before you get a reminder? So I don't know if that makes sense, but those are a lot of the parts of the discussion that we had when deciding whether or not this felt like something we wanted to try as a team.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a great opportunity, whether it's 24, 48 hours
Hmm.
further, some people may have
Right,
further than that, to have that conversation in terms of how it may be impacting their therapy, how it may be impacting that therapeutic relationship.
right, right. I want to ask you something actually, because this is bringing up, I have often really protected clients from the reality of their behavior on me as a therapist or on maybe the business of practice, meaning I haven't made any, and I never would make anybody feel bad or responsible that if you cancel late or if you cancel at 25 hours before that, and then I can't fill that spot, that I lose income. I hold true that I don't think that that's their problem or responsibility. But I have had this a slight shift in maybe thinking it isn't wrong to help people understand that that impacts the therapist. And so it's like, it's not your responsibility, but if you're not ready to commit to therapy, that is something that you need to be reflective on, because that does have an impact on the back end. And I don't know, I wonder what you think about, should we or shouldn't we, or when and when not, should we talk about the impact of certain kinds of client behaviors on the therapist and their well-being and financial security?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think because if my question or kind of reflection to that is like, if you don't have that conversation, where does that leave you feeling emotionally?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Are you wondering, do they value your time or do they value the process, or is there avoidance at play, or is
Mm-hmm.
there a genuine, you know, reason that this cancellation is happening? But then if it becomes kind of problematic, or, a pattern that feels like it becomes problematic. And I think
Mm-hmm.
my general go-to is like, hey, it's, if I have a 24-hour cancellation policy, and if a client cancels 25 hours, or, right at that 24-hour mark, I'll definitely, want to talk about that with them. Like, that's within the policy, but I also want to just check in with you, because sometimes that happens. Like, I don't want to do this. I can still
Right.
cancel.
Avoidance, yeah.
I'm not assuming that's the case, but in the future, if there's an ability to give me a sooner answer, that allows me to have other people be seen sooner.
Mm-hmm.
So try to just have a candid conversation around it
Mm-hmm.
without jumping to any particular conclusions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. It just, I think I'm even reflecting in the moment about how my own perspective on talking about the effect of another person's behavior, which is I feel silly in the moment, but bear with me. Talking about the financial aspect, again, I think there's a difference between perspective building and making somebody feel responsible. And I do feel like that is an important distinction. You are not responsible, client over here in my therapy space, for my financial well-being. And where what in whatever relationship we are in our lives, whether it's a therapy one in at home, or with our families of origin or work or whatever, our behavior has an impact on other people inherently. And this is one way that this behavior has an impact on our space and potentially on me. And so I do feel like I talk about that around everything else except the financial piece. But again, there's been this evolution. And so I'm even thinking about working with my office manager around some communication with a client with whom there was some pushback on the new cancellation policy. And, wanting to be customer service oriented and flexible, but also boundaried. I found myself writing a line that I have never written before, and I'll share it. Again, this was just something that felt right and good to me, not necessarily something that everybody needs to do. But I, just kind of reiterated what the policy was about, you know, um, reserve time, is often not able to be reallocated on such short notice. And this policy helps to ensure fairness. I mean, my thought is fairness among clients, but fairness, and supports our therapist's scheduled time and income loss for missed appointments. And just kind of informing people in a differently direct way that it has an impact. So a message like this or an email doesn't take the place of a conversation with their therapist or even with an admin. But I've noticed that shift, and um, I don't know. I hear you saying from an interpersonal therapy perspective, it's essential, and I agree from a client alliance and potential um, countertransference perspective. But allowing myself to talk about it more directly feels authentic.
Yeah. I love that. And, sometimes too, if somebody was acknowledging that, yeah, avoidance was part of this, or I just didn't want to have that conversation today or this week,
Hmm.
talking about appreciate that honesty. And I really value that transparency. And research shows that regular attendance predicts better therapeutic outcomes, and
Right.
irregular attendance correlates or, is in line with poor therapeutic results. So there's
Hmm.
also a reason if you're struggling to get out of bed, those are the days that we might actually have the most effective sessions for you.
Hmm.
And if you
Hmm.
can't come in person, then let's talk about video. Like
Yes.
there's other modalities, especially now in the telehealth world, that we can kind of get past sometimes, I think, barriers that impact people's follow through.
Hmm. Absolutely. The other thing that I think about that too, similarly, is okay, so you don't want to talk about that thing. Are there other things that we could talk about that could be valuable? And usually there are, and maybe it connects to this other thing. And so we're talking about that other thing without actually talking about the thing, or we're identifying patterns, or maybe we're celebrating wins. And it doesn't mean that somebody has reached their goals or they're exactly where they want to be, but sometimes we need those sessions that help a person realize how much work they are doing and how far maybe they've come. Because it can be so incremental that you don't really notice it until you look back and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And sometimes I love those sessions the most, even because it gives a chance for somebody else to be like, to notice the efficacy of their own intentions and their own
Totally.
work.
I'm laughing because when I used to go to a CrossFit gym, I would tell the owner, I'm like, today was a feel good session. Like we got to do bench press. I'm feeling like I'm leaving, like I'm doing great. Where other
Uh-huh.
workouts were like, okay, you have me looking at my shortcomings and the areas I need to improve in. And, just
Mm-hmm.
that balance I think is
Mm-hmm.
healthy and can show up in
Mm-hmm.
any space. But just I really appreciate normalizing that
Mm-hmm.
the feel good sessions and like let's process your wins and your successes is just as important because there's sometimes really some hidden gems in those conversations.
100%. It's therapeutic to look at both sides of that therapy process coin, right? And I think that consultation does the same thing for us as psychologists or therapists, that being able to share and get ideas for stuck points in our clinical work, but also being able to share, y'all, a client has been able to do X, Y, and Z for the first time in years. Or, you know what? They said something to me that they told me they never told anybody else before. And I feel honored to hold that story, but they trusted someone enough to tell anybody that story. It happened to me, and I'm glad for that. But that is such a cool space to get to with someone. And so I don't know. I think that that's the parallel of consultation and therapy, is that it can be therapeutic for us to have someone to share those wins with from a clinical perspective,
Yeah.
not just the client and their experience, but with another psychologist knowing what that experience means on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we got there, which was such a cool part of our conversation, by talking about new year practice management kinds of things, paperwork, insurance verifications. and updating policies and why, and maybe just our own evolutions as psychologists, and the more maybe confident or experience we get, being more able to skillfully talk about different aspects of practice, like, the impact on a therapist or a practice of a client's behavior. So, just kind of coming back to that, are there any other things that come to your mind about, you know, new year or practice management stuff?
It's kind of from left field, but I think one thing that I did heading into the new year was go to my office and, kind of just organize my bookshelves a little bit more, and then realize like I want to switch my desk around. And I flipped my desk where now I'm facing a wall, and it opens up the space a lot better and is more, aesthetically look pleasing. Um, but for my telehealth sessions, it actually gives my clients a better view of my office, but I don't get to look out the window. But I think it's better because I'm less distracted. But I also noticed like it just feels good to switch it up a little bit heading into a new year.
Dr. Bewley, if I were your client, I would have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
And, and I, knowing you, of course you did. And I respect you for it, because I know that your therapeutic style is going to be like, so you're reacting to the changes in the room. Let's talk about it, right? Um, and so I come at it from two places. I think it's a good modeling for clients on how to tolerate micro change in life.
Yeah.
Um, but also I feel some compassion for you. If I couldn't see light, I think I would have a hard time. I don't know how much telehealth you're doing these days, but I hope that you continue to monitor your own needs around that and figure out ways to make sure that it's a sustainable space for you.
Yeah. Well,
End rant.
don't get it twisted. The couch is in the exact same spot. I didn't move their spot, but
Okay.
it's, I think it's interesting for me of like who notices and who doesn't. And not that there's an expectation, but I think it's also that, being aware of your surroundings or spatial
Yep.
awareness.
Yep.
Um, but it's a good practice for me too, and being flexible with change. And, um, yeah, I am one of those people that like to switch my office up. But as I have a person that leases my office too, so I have to be more intentional around
Yeah.
change doesn't just impact me.
Yeah. For sure. So, thank you for sharing that, and good luck to you with those changes, kind sir. Um, I thought of something that I did over the break too, that I had been needing to be done, and I was able to get my partner to help me do some things. But specifically regarding office maintenance, for anybody who has a physical space, one of the things that we did was tighten. So all of the furniture in my office is furniture that we probably had to put the legs on and put together in some capacity. And so we tightened up all of the couch legs to make sure that they were securely fastened, because they do. It's like plopping on the couch, getting up and down, that kind of wiggles things over time. So we did that in my waiting room. It was important to me to ensure that I had furniture um, that was affirming for people of all shapes and sizes, and that, felt sturdy, so that nobody feels uncomfortable from that standpoint. And so, you know, there are all kinds of people who come in the office, and so I want to make sure that my furniture continues to feel supportive in every euphemism of that word. And so
Yeah.
tightening all the hex screws and the kitchen table and dining area, like kitchenette, tightening all of that up, because I don't want anybody, in a group meeting up there to fall, for the legs to fall off. That would be mortifying for everybody. So that, updating, changing some light bulbs in certain areas that require a ladder to get to. So there was a good day spent on office maintenance to make sure that the space was staying supportive in all the ways. And I cleaned out a closet that had been a catch-all, and
Mm, what a good
a
thing.
corner. Yeah. So I think let's not underestimate the physical aspects of maybe just making sure that our office is safe, supportive, and reliable in those ways. So that
Yeah.
was a good thing. Took some
It,
stuff to donate and all that good stuff. So.
it reminds me of a reel I think you sent me that's like what you think, private practice or group practice is going to be like, and, enjoying a big office or feet up on a desk. And then reality is like you're up there changing a light bulb.
So one of my team members sent me that, and I felt so seen when she sent me that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely exactly it. I'm on my hands and knees tightening hex screws under a coffee table, um
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah,
It's
absolutely.
a great point though, just in terms of like, I think, just having affirming spaces and, even like my office is on a third floor of a building and rarely do I use the elevator because elevators kind of freak me out. Um, but there's also privilege in that in terms of being able to take stairs. So, you know, I try to at least regularly go through the building in a way of as if I was a client. And sometimes I'll take the elevator just to see you know, is it accessible? And
Is it
I think
working? Yeah.
yeah, it's a great point on accessibility.
Hmm. And then for folks who might be all virtual, I think that the same is still warranted for your virtual space. Looking at your background, whether it's a virtual background that depicts something real, or it's the background so that your clients can see the office, or you know what, doing an inventory of what's behind them, what am I showing them that I intend to show them, or what am I showing them that I don't realize I'm showing them. And so I do think that our virtual spaces need to be very, I personally believe they need to be very intentional. um
Yeah,
and so if you haven't yet, it's only the 16th. Do an inventory of your virtual space, do a recording of yourself, and then watch it back and look at all of the corners behind your head so that you know what clients might be looking at. I think that that's a really good practice for for the new year. And I'll share with you, at the expense of totally giving away my secret, this is my office, but it's a picture of my office because at my computer it's kind of like a wall behind me. And this plant right here, I think I'm pointing at the plant. If it's not totally reversed, am I pointing at the plant that you can see?
yeah.
Yeah. My very first picture doing this was that plant was all wilted and droopy. And so I retook the photo whenever it perked back up. So that was one way that I noticed in my space, like, oh, I wonder how many people are noticing this dying plant behind my head. So
Yeah.
anyway, I think that's funny.
Well, you actually inspired me. That was part of the desk change was my EHR allowed a background image and I
Hmm.
liked it, but when I moved, I would kind of go like matrixy
Hmm.
and I thought maybe I could actually flip it and see what it looks like and then went with it.
Hmm.
But I like your background because the boundaries of your physical self don't get blurred when you move.
Yeah. For anybody wondering, it is something my computer allows me to do. And so it's associated with the camera and not like a web-based platform like our EHRs and virtual telehealth spaces are. And so I think it's just a little bit, it's more reliable. I more integrated. I'm not really sure the right like tech word, but I think that's what makes it different from using an EHR, because
Yeah.
it's into the camera and the system and not like the web. Although sometimes when I drink a piece of drink water or hold up like my whiteboard or something, it does eventually get lost in the background. So anyway, but yeah, I think those are all good things to make sure that our practices and our sessions and our backgrounds are exhibiting exactly what we want, and not anything more than that, because inherently what we show people is self-disclosure.
Yeah. You'd want
I
to talk.
love this conversation, and I'm glad that we had it. I'm sure that there might be other things, but I would be curious for any listeners who are other psychologists or mental health professionals. What do you do? And you may not hear back from us specifically in comments, but we'd love to hear it, as it may inspire us to integrate those same things. And then, other than that, I think just another really great opportunity to speak to folks about what really goes on beyond the session, because there is so much that it's like an iceberg, right? The session is just the part you can see above the water, and then beyond the session is the wealth of size beneath the water. So,
Yeah. Love it.
yep. All right. Well, I guess this is probably a good time for us to wind down today.
Yep. Well, I hope the conversation helps anybody think about how they're starting their new year or even kind of how they want to go into policy changes or updating policies and appreciate you listening.
Yep. Awesome. Happy New Year to everybody. And until next time, the consulting psychologists beyond the session are out.